Hi, today I'm going to talk about my favorite book of all time. It has completely surpassed all my expectations for any contemporary work of literature, like ever. And I hold it so near and dear to my heart. Whenever I first found out about it, I was drawn immediately to the pink cover and to just the depression on this woman's face. And I read it for the first time during quarantine. And quarantine was essentially my year of rest and relaxation in the sense that there was literally nothing to do, and all I did was read or like just try not to remember that I exist. And reading this book, I read it all in one sitting, and I think that everyone who is going to read this book should read it all in one sitting. And I would like to begin by just reading the quote by Toni Mitchell in the beginning. "If you're smart or rich or lucky, maybe you'll beat the laws of man, but the inner laws of spirit and the outer laws of nature, no man can. No, no man can." And this is from The Wolf That Lives in Lindsay. And that, I think, is a perfect preface to what this book is really about. Because when you think about it, this book, while the cover may seem like one of those like Eat, Pray, Love or really strange but also publishable autobiographies or memoirs by people in their mid to late 30s. This book is completely not what you would expect. So it is essentially just about a woman, and she's in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, and she's rich, she's white, she's skinny, she's pretty, she's gorgeous, and she's cultured, aka she has a degree in art history from Columbia, and her parents are both, they both passed away, so she's just kind of alone in this apartment in Manhattan, and she's trying to navigate throughout life beyond what is essentially post-grad. And the theory that she has inside her head is I'm sick and I'm tired of the way that this current existence is going. So my plan is to kind of cocoon myself or hibernate for an entire year, hence the year of rest and relaxation, in hopes of emerging after this year of just complete unconsciousness into a universe which I would more likely fit in or feel more okay in. She goes about this by enlisting the help of the most outrageous psychiatrist ever known to man, and the psychiatrist is named Dr. Tuttle, and Dr. Tuttle is the epitome of absurd in the sense that there are so many things that Dr. Tuttle, as a psychiatrist, should clearly pick up on and be like, oh, this is so not okay. And yet, she doesn't. She kind of seems apathetic or nonchalant to the narrator's misfortune, mental health-wise. She gives the narrator so many of these downers while the narrator keeps feeding her lies and lies. Well, some of it are true, but it's definitely an exaggerated version of the truth. So it's kind of like this exchange of, okay, whatever, I'm not listening anyway. Do you want your downers? Yes. Okay, here you go. And then just going on about their day as if nothing ever happened. And yeah, so that's how the narrator gets her downers or her medicine to help her hibernate. And there are only two other people who still are tied to the narrator's life that are alive, as both of her parents are dead. And one of them is the narrator's best friend, Reva. And Reva is a pretty average girl, a pretty average Jewish girl from Staten Island, lives in New York, went to Columbia as well as the narrator. However, Reva feels as if she doesn't fit in and sees the narrator as kind of like the ideal version of what Reva wants to become. And there's a clear distinction between Reva and the narrator as kind of like the before and after pictures. If you're thinking about like a cosmetic procedure, So naturally, Riva is envious of the main character, just as, not in a very overt way, but as in like oh, you're so skinny, you don't have to do X, Y, or Z, like, that's not fair. Oh, you're so rich, like, you get to just do this, like, that's not fair. And it's kind of condescending, but the narrator replies to Riva and this sort of, like, conversations in their friendships with the most apathetic, I couldn't care less responses ever. Spoilers, of course, but I'm doing a video essay. One of my favorite lines from this book is definitely, it's in the beginning, and it goes as such. I took a Polaroid of her one night and stuck it into the frame of the mirror in the living room. Riva thought it was a loving gesture, but the photo was really meant as a reminder of how little I enjoyed her company if I ever felt like calling her later while I was under the influence. Another little part in which Riva is completely dumped on by the narrator. Yes, here we go. So this is during the funeral that is held for Riva's mother, as Riva's mother passes away, serving as kind of like more of a foil between the narrator and Riva, as Riva had a wonderful relationship with her mother, whereas the narrator had little to none relationship with her mother, which I will dive into later. But another quote that struck out to me about Riva and the narrator's relationship is, watching her take what was deep and real and painful and ruin it by expressing it with such trite precision gave me reason to think Riva was an idiot, and therefore I can discount her pain, and with it mine. Riva was like the pills I took. They turned everything, even hatred, even love, into fluff I could bat away. Yes. Oh my goodness. So another person in the narrator's life that is mentioned quite frequently is her ex-boyfriend Trevor. And Trevor is this nearing middle-aged man who has a big fancy job and a big fancy New York apartment. And just like the epitome of, oh, I've seen American Psycho 16 times. Do you want to come see my apartment? Oh, no, you shouldn't come see my apartment, because if you see my apartment and if you see my living situation, you might fall so deep in love with me that you might propose to me, and I don't want that because I have severe commitment issues. Thank you, that was my impression of Trevor. But the narrator started dating Trevor when she was still in college, and Trevor was well into his career life, his post-grad experience by then, and it kind of seemed like the narrator, during her youth in college, reached out to Trevor for, maybe this time I can find someone who cares about me. However, this was not the case, sadly, and Trevor is just this kind of asshole, really, for lack of a better word. He's just like a privileged, entitled asshole who probably helped shape the narrator during her most formative years into becoming as what she is now, which is also an asshole. So when it comes to the relationship between Trevor and the narrator, there are quite a few quotes that I found were absolutely hilarious. So, for context, they were both heading out to this New Year's party. It was the year 2000. And they were together, but not together. They were just kind of there, like friends with benefits, but also like this like cycle from hell of like, do I have feelings? Do you have feelings? Do I want feelings? Anyway, so this is a conversation between Trevor and the narrator that had me literally burst out in pained laughter because I saw myself in this. So here it goes. Do you even like me? I asked him once he'd hung up. What kind of question is that? I love you, I was angry enough to say. How is that relevant? Are you kidding? Trevor told the driver to drop me off at the nearest subway station. That was the last time I'd seen him. I didn't go to the party. I just got on the train and went back home. just the dynamic between them two and their unconventional relationship. Well, thinking about it, it's very conventional because when you're of this in your 20s age, it's very rare that you find yourself in a committed, trusting relationship in the sense that, okay, so you give me attention, I'll keep you around. Yeah, you're an asshole, but like, I like, what else? I'm bored. Like, what else is there to do? Also, you're here. Do I want commitment? Sure, maybe one day. Not now though, because I can't imagine myself being with you. So I'm just gonna keep you around, just for entertainment reasons. Wow, that makes me sound like a terrible person. But if men can think that way, why can't women? And here is why I believe this book is literally the ending, the whole entirety of this book is the equivalent of a female orgasm, in which, and I will explain this because I know right now you're probably like, what? No, you get it. You get it. If you read it, you get it. In the sense that it starts off, you're like, oh, okay, all right. You're in the middle, you're like, oh, cool. I'm interested. Keep going. And you get to the end, you're like, okay, all right, almost there. And you get to the end, you're like, oh, really? Because this book is amazing, but sometimes I wish that the last 70 pages never happened. And now I'm just going to quickly give a summary of the main character and her parents. So she was born into a waspy family in which the dad was a professor and the mother was pretty much a trophy wife. And as a consequence of such, her father was not really involved in her life. He was kind of more of a bystander, just kind of there. Yes, he's there, he's a father, but he doesn't really say or do much. He much rather prefers career over his family, and his kind of non-presence definitely is enough to drive the narrator to a sort of frustration as to, like, I'm your daughter. Can you pay attention to me as much as you pay attention to your students? And leads to these feelings of resentment and lingering just inadequacy. And her mother is pretty much what you would expect from a trophy wife who probably does not want kids or never really wanted kids but had a kid just, for the nuclear convention, in the sense of, like, her mother is like, oh, check your weight. Are you sure you want to eat that? Are you sure you want to wear that? No, don't, her mother literally used to give her crushed Valium in her formula when she was a child because she was like, oh, you always cry too much. You're always so dramatic. And also, her mother ended up just resenting life in the same way that the narrator did. However, with years of more experience that had built up to such a frustration that the narrator's mother felt the need to take her life with combining pills, which are not as different as what the narrator is currently doing, and alcohol. So when her father dies first, she has this scene in which she's pleading him, showing emotion for what might be the first time in the entire book, at his deathbed where he's on hospice because he has cancer, and she's pleading. She's like, when you come up there, when you're in heaven, will you please give me a sign just to let me know that there's something after here and, like, to know that you're still here? And her father replies nothing to this and instead tells the nurse at the bedside, go get my wife. And, right, so then the father dies, and the mother comes in and out of the room, she gets bored, whatever, comes back, finally, he's dead. The narrator is sobbing because her father died, and the mother goes, oh, is he gone? Oh, okay. And retreats into her room. I feel as if female anti-heroes or anti-heroines have had this surge in popularity, and that is due to its relatability, just general relatability. I like to think of the imp of the perverse, in the sense that, you can think all of these dark, twisted things, and yet you can know, like, oh, okay, no, I'm not gonna do that, whatever. But the mere thought just shocks you. And of course, we all have these, like, dark, twisted sides to ourselves that we keep under tons and tons of layers because of fear of disrupting societal norms. And also, as women, we're just expected to be held to a certain line of accountability, and the level of forgiveness or sympathy is much higher than it is for male characters or male anti-heroes. When you're a woman, the world is already against you, and if you have any sort of thoughts that are not in the lines between what society expects from you, it's super difficult to find a chance for redemption. Whereas men and films such as The Joker or American Psycho or literally any film ever, they can do the most outrageous things and just get away with it. Why? Because, oh, he was cute, he was smart, I don't know, there's just something about it. But whereas for women, there's much more room for hatred, or just general dislike. And characters such as Jennifer Check from Jennifer's Body can be cited as a female anti-hero, as the movie was marketed for a young male audience, hence the sex appeal of Megan on the posters, whereas the general message of the film is more of a female revenge or a female power, and that clearly upset the first viewers when this movie first came out. It was a commercial failure. However, Jennifer's Body has recently become more and more popular over the years as it sits more comfortably with the way of thinking that people feel now, with the upsurge of the Me Too movement, or just the general men are trash discourse going on Twitter. But we feel much more accepting of these flawed characters because in our society, with the rise of mental health help, with the rise of being able to talk about things, being more open about things, we're able to acknowledge the fact that nobody is perfect and nobody conforms to any sort of standards entirely 100%, and therefore there is a much increased room for redemption or for sympathy. And I would like to talk about Amy Dunne in Gone Girl as the catalyst for the female anti-hero. While of course there were femme fatales in the noir films in the past, nothing has ever had such a striking hold on society as Amy Dunne. Amy Dunne is the perfect anti-heroine, and here's why. She is morally ambiguous, but of course morals are arbitrary and subjective, so I don't know if that one counts, but she does do unforgivable things. She goes against the laws that are set upon us by society and only acts for her own benefit or for her revenge, her vengeance. That is the number one most driving factor in Amy Dunne's psychology. And we also see this in Medea, in which Medea acts out of revenge against her husband, who ended up cheating on her and kills her children. However, Amy Dunne does the same exact thing in a more calculated, more cool, more logical manner. She spends months of preparation studying Nick and figuring out the right way of how to frame him for her murder, quote unquote. And she goes to such extreme lengths. However, we as an audience cannot look away from what Amy is doing because it is so intelligent, it is so intriguing, it's so captivating because it just is absolutely abnormal. And sure, I can think of so many married couples who have been like, oh yeah, like, I'll kill you, whatever. But, like, to go through with it? Wow, that's dedication. Like, I applaud that courage. I applaud that, like, mastermindy behavior. But Amy Dunne, there is a sort of forgiveness given to this character as she is such a cool girl. She's so smart. Everything that she does, while it may be flawed or morally incorrect, is so calculated, and she does it with such success and brilliance that it's no wonder that we're so captivated. And I see a clear distinction between Amy Dunne and our unnamed protagonist, unnamed narrator here in Ottessa Moschegh's My Year of Rest and Relaxation, as both of them are severely unhinged, yet they have a plan, and they go about succeeding in their plans. While the moral implications are absolutely side-tabled, of course, since neither of them are particularly good girls. Excuse me. Amy Dunne is brilliant, and so is the narrator in this moshegh novel. She's well-educated, she clearly thinks. She thinks about everything, every single possible outcome. It's all so calculated, especially towards the end of the book, where she leaves sticky notes and gives direct instructions to the person who is going to be using her for his art project. But anyway, there is a clear just going around and giving a big, middle finger to what society expects women to be and how society expects women to act in both Amy and this protagonist. And I think that is absolutely admirable, as both of these characters act out by our, I mean pretty much everyone's, most intrusive thoughts, most absurd theories and expectations and fantasies, and they do so in such a successful, arbitrary manner. In conclusion, this book is fantastic since it poses the question of, well, shouldn't she be happy? Why isn't she? She has everything that she needs when considering a more capitalist lens or a more socioeconomical lens. She has everything, and yet she is so dissatisfied with life. And I think that this book kind of ties in that existential ennui and that absurdity that we, as a society, in today's modern age, feel almost every single day. This book is just so depressing and yet so intriguing and so familiar. It feels as if anyone could be handpicked, placed in this situation, and feel the exact same way that she does, or felt that way at one point in their life. And this boredom, this monotony is just there, and we just have to learn to accept it and just to move forward. Just keep pushing up that boulder, up that hill. Referencing the myth of Sisyphus. But yes, everything is absurd, and yet here we are. What can we do about it? Just go on. And that's exactly what the narrator does, and that is exactly why I think everyone living right now should read this book. For publication reasons, My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshegh was taken up by Penguin Publishing House, and it was named it's like a New York Times Book Review Notable Book of the Year. Let's see, it was published in 2018 by Penguin Random House, LLC, and it was also published again by Penguin Books in 2019, and everyone should read this book. You'd think that just because she sleeps for an entire year, that would be very difficult to admire or to love about this book, but it's just so intriguing by the attitude that the narrator possesses, that is just so nonchalant and so morally compromised and so just disturbed that of course it has so many positive reviews. It takes out all of our darkest fantasies and all of our darkest thoughts and things that we wish we could do and goes for it. And I think that is so remarkable.